grant. DSAM, the Delaware Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health, is really happy to be continuing our partnership today with Carlton Hall Consulting with this second training in our series. We're so glad that you're all here to absorb the information that Nicole Augustine will be sharing about the Prevention Specialist certification process and the exam, and to get your questions answered. We really recognize the value of deepening our collective and individual expertise in prevention, and thank you for taking the time today to learn about the process. So without further ado, I'll pass it back to Carlton.
Abby, thank you so very, very much. With that, we are very pleased to share with you that this is, of course, being funded through a grant that the state receives from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And as such, we are really required, excuse me, to share with you that the views expressed in this webinar do not necessarily represent the views, policies, and positions of the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA. I'd also like to offer an additional caveat and disclaimer. We are providing hopefully a conversation that will be highly informative to those of you who are being curious and intentional about your certification process. But it was our desire to have someone from the Delaware Certification Board with us to answer your specific questions. Unfortunately, we were not able to do that, but in communication with them, they want you to know that any specific follow-up questions that you have about your process, to please get in contact with them at their website, which is delcertboard.org, and we will provide that information in the chat as you go forward with this. We are going to be conducting this session. This session is going to be a highly engaging and interactive session. In order to help support that, we need you to understand kind of some of the functionalities of what we're going to do in this session. And so,
all right. So I think Carlton is
be able to do that.
Oh, there we are.
Dave, are you there?
Oh, yep, I jumped in. You started to freeze up a little bit on us. But a quick little tour of your Zoom room for those that might be new to the platform. I'm going to start in the lower left-hand corner where it says mute and unmute. You also have your video controls there. Like I said earlier, throughout this session, we'd like it if you would remain muted and have your videos off during the main block of this session. However, we do have some Q&A time built in where we would love for you to unmute and turn on your camera and really just engage with us and hear your voice. Moving along the bottom of the screen, you'll see participants. If you click that, you'll have the list pop up on the right side of your screen that shows everybody that's in the room with us. At the bottom of that participant list, looking on the right side of the screen now, you'll see the cues. You can do thumbs up, thumbs down, yes, no. It's a way for us to sort of hear from you, and you can give us some updates and let us know what you're thinking there. Additionally, that bottom right corner is the chat box I already put in there, welcoming everybody. It looks like Abby put in that deck cert board. I've got to zoom in so I can read it. I must need glasses. Delaware Cert Board. All right. And then if you want to change your views, as you can see sort of in the top right, kind of by that participant list, it says speaker view or gallery view. That's how you can change how big the webcam and the slides are on the screen. Additionally, up above where it says view options, you can do side-by-side mode as well and switch back and forth. So it can play around with the layouts and see what you would like best. And if you have questions, again, I'll be hanging out in that chat box. I would love to hear from you.
Thank you, Dave. And so as Dave mentioned, we are really encouraging everyone to please engage with us throughout the presentation in the chat, having questions that we will be monitoring and trying to answer throughout the period. After the presentation that will be provided by our wonderful speaker today, there is going to be an opportunity for question and answer during that time. And so we will be monitoring those questions so that we might be able to offer your questions at that point. And speaking of which, all of this is intended because the state is highly interested in building the capacity of the workforce there. And so we are grateful for this opportunity to work with you all. Dave mentioned a number of things for you to consider and to be able to interact with us. I want to check that out. And so I always start off with a little bit of engagement, a little bit of fun as we do this. And so I'm going to put on the screen, if you will, and believe me, there will be a point to this, just a small activity just to make sure that everybody is with us. And so I love word games, word puzzles. I'm going to put on the screen a word puzzle. Each one of these represents a very common phrase. And if you wouldn't mind, go ahead into the chat box and put in the answers of those that you see there. I'm only going to provide 30 seconds for this. Go ahead, do that now. And Dave, when you start to see them begin to populate, please share.
All right, I'm keeping my eyes on that chat box. What are you thinking? All right, so we've got think outside the box.
Okay. What else do you see there?
Think outside the box, think outside the box.
Okay.
All right. That's half the battle. Back to the basics.
Good deal, good deal.
Yes.
Well, the reason I do this and share this, and thank you all for participating, but as you think about your certification process, as you think about becoming a certified prevention specialist, there are a number of things to consider. There are a number of aspects of this that really require us to think outside the box, if you will, looking and exploring the various components of this process. The expectations of the process, the expectations of being a certified prevention specialist, but it also requires you to understand the foundational aspects. So for us to be able to go back to the basics, to be able to do so. And so in line with that, I also want to just indicate that part of what it is that we are hoping to do with this webinar today is to help you be guided through that process by putting 2 and 2 together, and that's what this box represents. I can hear the groans over the internet right now, so I'll go ahead and move on from that. And that is why we are so pleased to have our remarkable speaker today, Nicole Augustine. Has been working in the field of prevention since 2001. She has a master's of public health from George Washington University School of Public Health, is employed by Wake Forest University as a project coordinator for the North Carolina Behavioral Health Equity Initiative, and is the project coordinator for the Southeast Prevention Technology Transfer Center, where she and I work together to oversee and implement their training and technical assistance delivery component. The goal of the Southeast PTTC is to provide training and technical assistance to individuals and organizations in the misuse of prevention in the Southeast region of the United States, which is HHS Region 4. She is a passionate prevention provider committed to supporting initiatives designed to address the complex substance use issues affecting our society. It is my esteemed pleasure to invite her here and to be a part of this conversation today. Nicole, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you might share yours and begin our conversation.
Okay. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. You know, I was waiting on the twos because I hadn't figured that one out. I was like, what is that? Put 2 and 2 together. Thank you, because that one was going to bother me. It's like, which one is that one? So thank you so much. I'm really excited about the conversation today. I am a huge advocate of certification. So I'm very excited to talk with you all today. There are three main objectives I want to achieve. One, to talk about who IC&RC is and the benefits of certification. Why should you be considering it? Two, I want to talk about the 6 prevention performance domains that the certification is based off of. And then we'll end with a conversation on what the certification process is. And we'll have time at the end, like we're saying, for conversation, for discussion. So our first objective is, who is IC&RC and what are the benefits of certification? So IC&RC is the International Certification Reciprocity and Certification and Reciprocity Consortium. Now, it was just organized in 1981. And if you think about it, that is young. Okay, that is very young for a certification for a field. But it was organized in 81 to really develop standards and to create an examination. As of now, there are over 50,000 professionals across the globe, really, because it is an international certification process. IC&RC has partnerships with CADCA, with NPNs. Hopefully these are acronyms that folks know already if you're in prevention, but these are some of our major governmental heavy hitters, not just all governmental, but any sort of prevention agencies that are really trying to push our workforce forward. Now, IC&RC has products that really look at what is the latest research, what is the evidence base, and they do create updates every 5 years to make sure, one, the exam is up to date, two, the recommendations for the field are also up to date. The other thing to know about IC&RC is that there are over 73 member boards. 11 of them are international. The really, really awesome thing I like to think about when it comes to certification is, because this is an international credentialing process, your credential can go anywhere. I realize, you know, you're in Delaware right now, but it's a big world and you never know where you may end up in your career. So the really awesome thing about this specific certification is that there's reciprocity all across the country and in 11 different countries. So what are the benefits of certification? I want to pause here a minute and allow an opportunity for us to use the chat. And just to get an idea from what you all believe, I'm imagining many of you may not be certified right now, but if you were to consider it, what would you think would be a benefit of becoming certified? And so we'll take a minute in the chat to see what you all's thoughts are around certification. Okay, common language, shared understanding, yes. Anything else come to mind as to what would be the benefit, okay? So a professional network is great. Any other thoughts? Okay, a deeper understanding of the importance of prevention. Yes. So I appreciate, and you all can continue to, as you're thinking about this, continue to type in what you believe are some of the benefits of certification. Professionalism, wonderful. Okay. So I'll share with you some of the things that I think are what's important about certification. One, it identifies the professionals in our field. Right? If you think about the history of prevention, prevention historically has been a field that wasn't necessarily based in like academics, the way, you know, a doctor is, or a lawyer, or even someone who's a therapist, okay? And so certification is our way of providing professionalism around the field so that there are standards in the work that we do. It provides credibility and verifies competence, which is an important part of our field as we seek money and resources from governmental agencies or from funders. We need to show that what we do is credible, that we are competent professionals, and certification is one of the best ways to do that. It also provides reciprocity. This is the one benefit I was talking about earlier. For any of you wanderlust people in the audience who like to see new places, the benefit of being able to take your credential elsewhere is really, really great. The other thing is to think of it as a marketing tool. When you become certified, you're able to say, hey, this is who I am. I have this particular certification. It enhances your resume and your reputation. And as an agency, if you hire folks who are certified, or if you create a plan for your staff to become certified, it shows too that your agency has a commitment to a particular standard around the work we do in prevention, which is extremely important. So there are a lot of benefits to being certified. The second objective I want to talk about are the performance domains. This is the content in which the exam is based upon. Now, there are actually 6 domains. I was going to do a poll here, but I skipped it because I'm not sure that folks will know this, but there are actually 6 prevention domains. They're listed here in detail. I'm going to actually talk about each of these individually. And what's really, really awesome is that once you become certified, you're someone who is expected to have knowledge in all 6 of these domains, because this is how you would be tested. So let's take a deeper look into each of these domains. The first is planning and evaluation. It is the largest part of the test. It accounts for 30% of your test questions, okay? There's a lot of content here. If you're someone who currently does any sort of community work, you are already practicing the skills around planning and hopefully evaluation, as those are 2 that go hand in hand. I've listed here some of the skills that are important as a part of domain 1, but you want to be able to be knowledgeable on how to conduct a needs assessment. And from your needs assessment, you want to then be able to take those needs and identify how you can meet those needs. How do you prioritize them? Are you knowledgeable on the various type of strategies that can be used to address those particular needs? And then from there, do you know how to develop a plan? How do you identify resources so that once the plan is in place, it can be continued? How do you further it? Do you have an understanding of sustainability? And then 2, do you have an understanding of evaluation? Now, as you're looking at this, I just said a lot, and it is a lot, which is why this particular domain is the heaviest. It's 30% of the exam. But the content here is extremely critical to the foundation of what it means to be a prevention specialist. I am seeing a bit of chat here. I want to pause a minute and see if there are some things we wanted to pull out from the chat before I move on. Sure. Okay, so some other folks are still commenting on the benefits. Okay, great. Okay, good. And so I am curious, and maybe we can do this as a bit of a chat here. Let's see. Yeah, we could do it as a chat. I am curious, how many of you have been a part of a community needs assessment? And you could just say yes or no in the chat box. Okay, we got yeses coming in. Great. Yeah, if you've ever been a part of a community needs assessment, you are somewhat and very much so familiar with the resources, with the skills needed to create a community needs assessment.
Nicole, you're
It's all about understanding what our community problems are so that we can correctly identify the right type of strategies to address those problems.
Nicole,
and did I hear? I thought I heard someone talking.
Yeah, Nicole, I just want you to know that your polls are available to you when you're ready.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, great. So it's good to see that folks have been a part of having done a community needs assessment. Domain 2 focuses on prevention, education, and service delivery. Now, surprisingly, this is 15% of the exam. Now, I know when I was first looking at the exam and figuring out the domains, I was a little bit surprised that this domain was just 15%. Because at the time, I was a prevention specialist, and this was probably 90% of my job, doing prevention, education, and service delivery. Now, when you think about the history of prevention and our field, that has been the focus. We have predominantly worked on, providing education in schools or parenting groups and that sort of thing. But when you look at what is expected for our skill set and our knowledge, only 15% is dedicated towards prevention education. Now, I think some of this is really trying to get us into this movement away from just education into looking at environmental strategies. But I do think it's interesting to think that 15% is that. Now, some of the main things you want to be thinking of here around service delivery is understanding concepts of fidelity. The great thing is over time, prevention has really focused on making sure we have the science to back up the work that we do. And a part of that is understanding what fidelity is. And fidelity just means you have been given a curriculum, you've been given a roadmap, if you will, for how to create a particular change. And fidelity is making sure you follow that roadmap. And so I like to talk about this a little bit here within this particular domain, only because I do think sometimes fidelity can be a challenge. As you think about the various communities you may be serving, you may realize that you've got to create an adaptation to your program in order for it to meet your community's needs. And that's okay to do, but you want to make sure you do it still within the realm of fidelity. All right, so domain 3. Now, I'll give you a little bit of history about domain 3. Probably about 5 or 6 years ago, there were actually only 5 prevention domains instead of 6. And a transition occurred where they added this particular domain, domain 3, which accounts for 13% of the exam and focuses on our communication skills. If you really think about our work in prevention, this is truly the foundation of everything we do. Communication is a strong skill to have. Now, even though it's only 13% here, the concepts around communication are throughout every single domain. You can't do prevention education without communication, right? And if you think about it, planning and evaluation can't happen without communication. But the intention of this domain is to really pull it out and recognize what are the accelerated skills we need to be most effective in the work we do. And so some of the skills are listed here about facilitation skills, public speaking skills, interpersonal skills. And so I want to actually pause here a minute, only because I'm the kind of person who really does believe communication is a very, very strong piece of our work. And I'd be curious, and we can do this by chat too, that what are some of the ways you work on your communication? Do you have anything you do in particular? Do you practice anything? Are you a part of any sort of groups that help you develop your communication skills? I'd be curious from those here on the call, what are you doing to improve your communication skills? And now, do we also have the hand raising feature on here too for participants?
We do.
Okay.
They would be in those participant.
Some people like to talk. So if somebody wanted to talk and share instead of chatting, they could.
Yes, you can use the participant cues at the bottom of the participant list if you'd like to raise your hand or a thumbs up, any kind of indicator there, and we can unmute you and chat.
Awesome. Okay, so some folks that coming in on the chat. This is great. So we have Abby saying she's been a part of Toastmasters for a few years. Karen, Toastmasters, look at that, and Dale Carnegie training. Awesome. It's really, really awesome that folks mention Toastmasters. I'm someone who's currently in Toastmasters. I do it also. I probably joined Toastmasters about a year ago, and I think it's been amazing. Especially, I'll say, just as a side note, specifically in this context of doing all of our meetings virtual. Toastmasters traditionally is something like we've all experienced where our trainings would be in person, have moved to virtual. And I'll admit that has been one of the things I've really taken to enjoy about Toastmasters is we do our meetings virtually. And it's all about how do we make it better? How do we present better in the virtual platform? So I encourage, listen, how to win friends and influence people. Love it, yes. Look at that, rewatching and editing my virtual recordings. That is a great suggestion, Dave. So for those of you who do any sort of trainings, really, if you can, make it a point to ask that it is recorded so that you then can do exactly what Dave is talking about here. And the best way to improve your communication skills is, one, to be able to see what your skills are, to be able to hear what we call your filler words, to see what you're doing so that you can then evaluate yourself and make improvements on that. Because our communication's everything. It's our foot in the door, really, on all of our work. Okay, so domain 4 focuses on community organization. And this is the domain that accounts for 15% of the exam. And it really reminds me of all the work we do around coalition work. How do you work effectively with diverse groups? Are you understanding that community ownership is a critical part of the sustainability of any sort of community programs that are happening? And then, are you knowledgeable on how to develop strategic alliances? So again, this particular domain is thinking about what else can we do besides just the prevention education domain, okay? Now, this fourth domain connects very directly, I would say, with the fifth domain. So 4 and 5 are very complementary to me. 4 focuses on the community organization and coalition building, whereas 5 starts to look at what is the public policy and environmental change that we should be working on. Now, this accounts for 12% of the exam questions and really looks at, do you have a good understanding of advocacy? Do you know the difference between advocacy and lobbying, right? And recognizing why there's a difference there. What is the work that you're doing around policy change? For me, this is where, you know, the rubber meets the road, as my grandmother likes to say, that old saying, where you really start to see some traction and some movement on a larger scale around creating community change. So if you're thinking about and tracking what I've talked about so far, right, we've got planning and evaluation, we've got prevention education, which predominantly has been where a lot of us in prevention have focused, but these later ones are really looking beyond just the classroom or beyond just the education, and what can we do to create change in our community. Remember, the whole purpose of this is to make sure that we as professionals are well-rounded and that we have the skill set to do multiple things. When you think about what it means to be a prevention specialist, you are someone who has knowledge, who has expertise, who's able to facilitate a community moving to a place of creating change, of reducing their substance misuse problems that are occurring in their community. And public policy and environmental change are a really, really excellent way to get that done. Now, the final domain is domain 6. This accounts for 15% of the exam, and it focuses on our professional growth and responsibility. Now, this is one in particular that I'm actually a really big fan of, mainly because this one includes our ethical guidelines. And I'm just a nerd in that way, and I enjoy conversations around ethics and specifically how it relates to the work we do in prevention. But this particular domain is going to focus on you. What have you done as the professional? One, to make sure you have the knowledge base, you understand prevention theory, prevention practice, right? Because in you understanding that, you then deliver the services in a professional way. You also want to make sure you're knowledgeable about our prevention ethics. I've been finding out that often folks don't even realize that there is a prevention code of ethics. You could actually Google prevention code of ethics and it comes up. And there are 6 principles around that. The other thing that's an important part of here is cultural responsiveness. This includes cultural competency, cultural sensitivity, all the different various languages that we use around how to be professional. Ethical use of funds, and then the other thing is advocacy. Advocacy is something that we look at also in the previous domain, Here, it's reiterated again to really say that a part of being a well-rounded professional is making sure that you are advocating for health, for wellness, for promotion, right? How knowledgeable are you on policies that affect substance misuse field, right? How knowledgeable are you on things? And do you do any advocacy work? I would say this is the part of the whole professional package that people steer away from a little bit. When we get into policy change, I think folks are typically uncomfortable with it. But it is a part of how you're tested and the knowledge to know, and it's all about the development of a well-rounded professional. So those are the 6 prevention domains, the performance domains. And when you are ready to take your test, you will be tested on questions and knowledge that come from all 6 of these domains. Okay. So what I want to do now is I've got a poll here because I am curious about who's in the room and who has a certification. So where are you in your process? And just choose whichever one relates best to you.
All right, keep those votes coming. 7, 8, couple more of you. Let's see where you're at.
Okay.
9, all right, almost there.
Okay, so looks like most folks, haven't started yet, which I'm glad you're here. Hopefully none of this is scaring you away. And we've got a few folks who are one person working on their requirements and another person ready to test, which is awesome. Okay, this is great. Thank you for sharing this poll. This is awesome. Good to know. So what I'm going to do from here is I want to talk about the certification process. And it's good to know where folks are, with most of you not having started yet. This information should be very helpful to you in terms of what to expect moving forward. As was mentioned earlier, Carlton shared this website. I believe it was also dropped into the chat box. But you can visit the Delaware Certification Board website. I put a screenshot up here just to share with you where it is if you haven't started at all. This is a great place to go to get information. You want to click on this section called Certifications. And in that particular section, there are resources and information about the application specifically for the Certified Prevention Specialist. What I'm going to do is to kind of just give you the large roadmap of what to expect as you get started, since so many of you haven't started yet. And there are 3 main things to think about. The process includes your experience and your education, and the last part is the exam, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So with experience and education, Delaware has specific requirements for before you can even take the exam, and it's important that you know what those are. So the first thing is your experience level. You need at least 1 year of experience in prevention, okay? Or they'll do 2,000 hours of part-time work. With that, you need 200 hours of supervision. So it's important that if you're someone who's wanting to get certified, you either have identified someone at your agency who can provide supervision, or you seek an internal person to provide that supervision, because supervision is a critical part of being able to complete the application. What I have found historically for me is that because the prevention specialist certification is still relatively new, I told you that, the board really kind of brought this together in '81, which is not that long ago. We don't have a whole lot of people who are certified as prevention specialists. So sometimes I found that folks will actually have challenges finding someone who can provide supervision. So you want to look into that and make sure you kind of take a look at that, and also reach out to IC&RC if you need to. Reach out to your Delaware board. That's why the board exists. They can connect you with someone to make sure that can happen. In terms of education, Delaware does have specific requirements. You need at least a bachelor's in order to be able to sit for the exam, and then you need training hours. So they require a total of 120 training hours that you have to submit, with 24 of those hours specifically on alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. And then you are required to do 6 hours of ethics. I will say here that, your training and education is on you. Most likely you will be a part of an agency that can help and assist you getting those hours. But there's so many ways to get training hours from all sorts of places, so that this shouldn't be too difficult for you all to get a hold of. But these are kind of like the basic requirements you need before you can even take the exam. Let me just, I'm seeing the chat.
I had one question in there for you.
Yes, yes. Okay. So is there anything for an associate's? Okay, I got that. No, not that I know of. Now, this may be something we want to ask the Delaware board specifically, but for Delaware, from what I found, the requirements for the prevention specialist require a bachelor's degree. But that doesn't mean that there aren't other types of certification processes that would allow that. So there are some standards because, the IC&RC is the international board, and, states make different decisions. I live in a state that doesn't actually require a bachelor's, but you do have to follow the guidelines of whatever your state has decided. Okay. Okay, let's see here. Okay, and then, so let's see, declared. Okay, so let me definitely clarify that. On your supervision, the person who's supervising you doesn't have to have a prevention specialist certification. There are other certifications that person can have to be qualified as a supervisor. So thank you for clarifying that in case there was confusion about that. There we go, yeah. Your supervisor does need to be a certified professional, but they don't have to be a prevention specialist certification. There are other certifications that would allow someone to do that. I just find it helpful, and so this is a philosophical thing. I have personally found it most helpful to get supervision from someone who's actually in prevention, because my challenge has been receiving supervision from someone who's in treatment. A lot of times they don't know the same language or haven't been very helpful. So here's what I would recommend. If you only have access to a supervisor that has a credential outside of prevention, go ahead and do that. And then I would recommend getting a mentor, someone who has a history in prevention, who can really help you understand the concepts, because that's what's going to help you in having the knowledge for the exam, which is the last part of all of this. You're going to gain a lot of knowledge as you go through your trainings that are required, your minimal trainings, but some of the nuances around what it means to be a prevention professional, I think really do come from folks who are living, walking, and breathing the work of prevention. So the last component for the process of certification, sorry, I'm trying to minimize my chat here, is the exam. Okay, so once you've gotten all your paperwork together, you submit everything, you're then eligible to sit for the exam. The exam is standardized. It was developed by IC&RC. Everybody gets the same exam, which is great. Now for you in Delaware, the fee is $350. It's a 3-hour exam, which is plenty of time. You get 150 questions. If you're going through a question you're not sure, you can tag it or flag it and move on, but you'll have plenty of time. The highest score you can get is 800, and you need a 500 to pass. Because the exam is now computerized, it's offered all the time. Now, the one thing I have not checked on, and my apologies, what has happened because of COVID-19 and social distancing, because testing always happened at a site where there was a computer. So that is the one thing I don't know, is what type of modifications are being made right now for folks who are wanting to test. And I imagine they're probably doing some sort of social distancing at testing sites, but typically it is an exam that is offered multiple times a week. And because it is computerized, you get your results immediately. the certificate and all the official paperwork comes later, but they would let you know right then whether or not you pass the exam. Now, if you don't pass for the first time, you do have to wait a period of time. So they give you time to study, if you will, and then you will have to retest and pay a fee to just for the testing. It's not as much as the $350. But that's the process, okay? And a mouthful. So hopefully everyone understands that. I want to pause a minute here and take some questions around this. I'm trying to minimize here. And I'm actually I want to stop sharing because I want to see people's faces. I want to be able to talk to you guys. Okay.
All
Well, a lot
right.
of you are new and haven't started the process yet. So I'd be curious what type of questions have come up as I've been talking about the process and what to expect.
Dave, we can unmute and allow folks to show themselves. There you go.
Yes. So you should be able to unmute yourselves now. Come on into the Zoom room and let's chat.
Walton, hi, Abby. Great to see you again. And Nicole, I don't know if I think I know you. Dave Clausen, I know you from my Boys and Girls Club days. And I'm actually in the process of retesting again. So my application is still active, is still good. My credentials and everything for the application process is still intact, I think until October.
Okay.
So I'm trying to mentally prepare myself to do the test. My question, and thank you, Nicole, for sharing the information, because I've received emails to remind me that, you know, I have to take the test before October 25th, but they did not put in the email any information as far as due to COVID-19, how should I actually go and get the test administered. But my question, I'm using the candidate guideline from the IC&RC.
Yes, yes, yes.
Now it's pretty dated. It says based on 2013 prevention specialist job analysis. And I didn't know if there was anything more current or
The
anything.
most current I've seen is 2015. It's only a couple years, and I think it's only minor edits.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. But you know what? I did say they do read every 5 years. So we're in 2020. So
Right.
here soon, we might be seeing a new document coming out. I'm not sure. But it's around the time, if they're going to do an update, that it would be happening soon.
Okay. I just didn't want to, I don't want to miss if there's any specific questions or anything that they changed as far as the questioning that, you know, that I have to look for. So.
So Mary Jo Mather oversees the Delaware Cert Board. She's
Yeah,
a
I know her.
wonderful individual and
Yes, she is.
friend. She really was upset that she wasn't able to be on this particular session today, but she just really opens herself up and says, if there's any specific questions that you all have, please get in contact with her or her team via the website to be able to address those kind of specific issues and specific questions. But there are willing and wanting to kind of walk you through the process to make sure that you're able to achieve your certification goals.
Excellent. And I do know I have communicated with Mary Jo on a number of occasions. So thank you for that.
Oh, great. You know, I was going to ask you, what are you using to study, Lisa?
I'm actually using the candidate guidelines that they have, because they have all of the domains broken out. And then they have like a pre-test in the back with, you know, so I basically use that. And then I use the 2015 document. I think it's from Rhode Island.
Yep. Yeah.
So I use that one. I have that one as well.
Okay, great.
That's a little bit more in depth. Yeah.
For those of you who are still kind of thinking about the process and kind of wondering about it, on the Delaware Certification Board's website, they offer actually the kind of a sample test. You can get a feel for kind of what your breadth of knowledge might be in those various domains that Nicole just walked us through, and get a sense of kind of the kind of questions that they're going to that you can expect to see on the test. And some of these study tools and study guides that Lisa's mentioning are on that site as well.
Okay, great, great. Yeah. Well, Lisa, good luck to you in
Thank you.
retesting. Yeah, I'm sure you'll do fine.
Hope so. Yeah, I really want to gain this certification under my belt.
Yeah. I see someone recommending to do a study group.
I see you,
Oh,
Mildred.
that would help.
Yeah, that'd be
Mildred's ready to join up with you.
yes, because quite a few of you in the room said you haven't started, and studying would be a great way to bring your minds together and review the content.
Nicole, I believe Karen may have a question.
Okay, Karen?
Yeah, hi, everybody. Thank you very much for the information. It's very helpful as planning. I'm one of the people who is not yet certified. And you had mentioned 120 training hours. Could you share a little bit more about that?
Yes, so a part of when you're doing your application, you've got to submit what they call training hours, essentially. And so this is whenever you go to any sort of, and I don't know if this particular training, the board would, I don't know, you know how when you go to trainings and you get CEUs or credits or things like that, a part of what you do is you keep a tally, you keep a documentation of all the trainings you're doing. And what you want to make sure is that not all of them are just generic. You've got to have ones that are going to be specific to alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, which is our specific industry. And then you've got to have your prevention ethics also, 6 hours of that. Once you get those, which I think is a total of 30, the rest of the hours can be anything that's related to substance prevention, anything that's related to your professional growth. But you have to make sure you keep the certificates of that so that you can submit all of that when you put your application in. Okay, you got it?
And
Okay.
Nicole, do virtual trainings count for that
Oh,
too? So like webinars and stuff that you can
yes,
attend?
they definitely do. Now, the one thing I would say is to check with the board, because so here's been the challenge when we talk about what's happening with COVID, right? Historically, and this is happening, I think, across all industries that do continuing education, is historically, they prioritize in-person only, and they limit how many virtual you can do. We see it all the time. Now, I don't know what's happening because of COVID with everything being 100% virtual, whether or not those type of restrictions are being, let go of.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, typically virtual and in-person are accepted. Usually there's a limitation on how many virtual, but I imagine if that is the case, that's being waived right now.
Okay. And are there like a top 3 or 5 sort of go-to resources for this sort of training that would qualify that you could recommend?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few out there.
I'm sure.
Yeah, there are a few. So when I think of some of my major places, I go a lot for trainings for prevention. Well, we've got a couple people on here right now. We got CHC. They definitely provide trainings, okay? We also have the PTTC, which is a relatively new network that provides a lot of free trainings. CADCA provides a lot of trainings that you can do online. Dave and Carlton, who are some other big heavy hitters with trainings that people can access? Those are the main ones that I think about.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave, if you want.
Prevention Solutions at EDC offers some online training as well. But yeah, pttcnetwork.org. I got to promote that one a lot.
Yeah. Healthy Knowledge, that website has online trainings, and a lot of those have the credits already attached to them.
And again, the trainings that are offered via the state, that are offered via the state, and the various modalities that you all do are also allowable by the board, knowing kind of how the Delaware prevention the certification board kind of operate, I know that they will kind of accept those certifications as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, great. Any other questions? I know quite a few of you said you were just getting started. Anybody nervous about getting certified? Any apprehensions?
Come off of mute. I'm gonna say yes and
Okay.
yes because it's timed, and I think I just don't do well with time testing because I'm looking at the clock and I'm looking at, you know, all the answers. It's 120 questions. That seems like a lot, but it's really not because it's a 3-hour test, 2 hours, or whatever it is. But I'm just, you know, and then I think I found in the past that any one of the multiple choice answers could be right. And then you just have to know which one is the one that they're looking for. So,
Well,
You
yeah,
know, out of that best answer, you're right.
put another way, you're looking for the best answer.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I would say, and I don't know, Nicole, if you would concur, but I would say that one, because I get tests kind of anxious as well, a good bit. I remember when I was going for mine, I was feeling the same way. Um, this process is such that you can go through it. You have the number of those questions, but they allow for a certain number for you to miss to be able to still achieve the certification. It is a pass-fail situation if it still operates the same way as it did when I was doing it. And I guarantee you, if you just take a look and make sure that you kind of do the practice test and look at all the various knowledge areas that Nicole spoke to. With all your experience, Lisa, I have zero doubt in my mind
Well,
ability to pass. And that actually goes with everyone, and I can see a number of you that I'm familiar with on this. There's zero doubt in my mind, so you can kind of
yeah. Thank you for that vote of confidence, but I failed it once time. So I'm just like, I know this stuff. It's like you know that you know it. And it's like, oh, you know. So thank you for that vote of confidence. And
the study group thing, I think, is a great idea.
I think that will help. Yeah, that would
If
definitely
you're
help.
willing to do that, I think that'd be cool.
Excellent.
I
Excellent.
totally agree. You know, Lisa, and to the rest of the room, here's what I recommend is, because people do get testing anxiety, just flag it and move on. You know, get through all of them and then go back.
Yeah.
Don't get stuck. If it's confusing, I don't know, just move on. Because like Carlton was saying, there's quite a big wiggle room there for being able to pass the exam. And so if you just get through the test questions, you'll find out, oh, there may be ones that are really, really quick and easy to get to, and others I can come back and think about. The other thing, so with the study group, I did drop into the chat the link for the Rhode Island one, which I know, Lisa, you said you already have. One recommendation I would have for your study group, and this is something I did with a group of friends of mine when we were all studying together. We actually went through each question, and what we did, instead of just answering the questions, we talked about why the other answers weren't right. And then if it wasn't right, what is it actually connected to? So you're really getting a really clear understanding of all of the concepts, because what confuses people is they are tricky. Some of the responses are similar, but you have to know the nuances of the information to know why it's this, why it's A versus C.
Right.
And so what I usually do is I actually talk about the answers. Why is it not B? You know, and then if it's, what is B actually related to? Because it's not like they make up random things for the answers. You get what I mean?
Yes.
So
Yes, that's an excellent strategy. Thank you.
Identify that, it'll help you with all of the questions.
Great. That's an excellent strategy. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
What other questions or thoughts do we have? We want to keep this in engagement going. Please feel free to unmute yourselves, and if you want to, you can show yourself, but we understand completely if you do not. Any other questions? Going once.
I just had one question. Is there a time limit on courses? If you took a training 3 years ago, does it expire?
There is a time limit, and I believe it's 5.
Yeah, 5 years.
I believe it's 5 years is the further back you can go. So if you've recently completed school or anything like that, you can use a whole course for those training hours. Remember the 120 I said? I think one course counts for like 20 or 30 hours actually. So there are some equivalencies you can do if you've had any sort of coursework that's relevant to prevention in the last 5 years.
Great, thank you.
One of the things that I will share with you is that after this is over, within the next couple of days, you will be receiving an email and we will have a link to the recording of this session to look at those various knowledge areas and domains that Nicole spoke to and just begin to kind of look at what training or where is your confidence level with those specific areas, and then be able to seek out specific trainings to help reinforce that. But it will help you kind of begin your process. One last thought is that when I had helped a number of a group in the Washington, D.C. area to go through this process. I think we took about 18 or 19 through the certification process at one time. One of the things that the study group idea is really, really helpful, kind of doing it kind of as a group, it was really, really helpful, but also planning to do and take your test kind of like very, very soon after you've kind of gone through kind of any kind of a learning process or training process or review process is also helpful, you know, while that knowledge and while that information is still fresh, to be able to take the test then, I think is another way of making sure that you've given yourself the best opportunity.
Awesome.
Any other thoughts, any other questions? I think we're coming up on time. So
no, but this has been great. Thank you guys so much. It's good to reconnect with you, Carlton, and thank you, Abby, for doing this again for us, because I had missed the last one on this training. So thank you so much, and thank you, Nicole, for spearheading this.
thank you very, very much, Lisa, and everyone for joining. Just a couple of final thoughts as we are ending. As I mentioned, you all will be receiving an email from us shortly. Within that email would be a link to the recording of this session, as well as instructions and a link to an evaluation, which is very important for us so that we can make sure that we can improve upon this process. Abby and Dana need this for their purposes. So please, when you receive that email, please, I promise you the evaluation will only take a couple of minutes for you to kind of really go through to be able to do that. So be on the lookout for that. And just as a reminder, we will be coming back together again on the 21st. And I'll be leading us through a conversation with you all to kind of talk about kind of how we're looking at prevention and part of my arguments for looking at what it means to be a prevention leader during this time that we're dealing with this pandemic and beyond, and what are some of the implications. And so hopefully you'll find that conversation of value and meaning. So you'll be looking out for the invitation to that, and please sign up and share with your friends. But with that, thank you all so very, very much for joining us. Thank you for taking the time to look at how we might be able to support the great work that you all are doing in the state as well as possible. And we're living in some wonderful times, but also challenging times. And it has been an honor to be a part of the work and the role that you're playing in providing support to your remarkable state. Thank you all so very, very much. And with that, again, Abby, if you're there, any final words for us as we close out?
No, just a big thanks to everyone for being here and for being so engaged and in the conversation. So really appreciate it. And huge thanks to Nicole for that great presentation.
Thank you, Nicole. Fantastic presentation. Thank you all. Appreciate you all.
Good luck to all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Take care, everybody.
See you guys.